Hi there, I'm Cherie.
And I'm Chris.
And we're of RVmobileinternet.com.
You may also have seen us as Technomadia.com online.
And in today's video, we're going to be talking about the 4 cellular carriers in the U.S. Verizon, AT&T, Sprint, and T-Mobile.
There are really only 4 nationwide carriers in the U.S. You might see others advertised. They are either regional carriers that only cover a small area, or they are other companies rebranding and using the networks of one of the big 4 behind the scenes.
So yeah, the 4 nationwide carriers that provide coverage in many urban and rural areas across the country. And as an RVer, they are the choices that many of us that rely on cellular data utilize. Now, if you live in a fixed area, like you have a house that you might be based out of and you do some RV trips every so often, or you might park your RV seasonally somewhere for a while, the choice is a lot easier. You can pick the carrier that works best in the area where you're stationed at.
The simple thing is just ask your neighbors what works for them. Is there signal here? Is there a dead zone? Invite them over and ask them to make a call in your house. And that's simple when you're living in one place.
There's also websites and apps like Sensorly and Open Signal where you can go and look for user-submitted reports about what the signal is like for that area. And that makes choosing a carrier for one location a lot easier. But for those of us RVers that travel and move around a lot, like we do, choosing one carrier can get a bit difficult because no one carrier covers everywhere in the country. Each area kind of has its own strengths and weaknesses for which carriers work best.
So yeah, there's no universal good right answer, but we're going to kind of guide you through the strengths and weaknesses of these 4 major carriers.
So the first carrier that we're going to talk about is Verizon.
Big Red, they are the biggest, the largest, the most coverage carrier in the country.
And if you go on most any RVing forum or group and ask what carrier to use, almost unanimously you're going to get Verizon as the answer. It is the carrier that most RVers travel with, and there's a good reason for it.
Verizon has been around for a very long time. They have a lot of rural coverage, and they were also the very first carrier to really invest heavily in LTE networking technology, and almost their entire footprint nationwide has been upgraded to LTE. So they've got a lot of coverage and a lot of speed, but well, that kind of comes at a cost, quite literally.
So Verizon, because they are so popular, and especially if you get to a large RVing area, you go someplace where there's a lot of RV parks, well, almost every RVer's heard that Verizon is best, and those towers can easily get overloaded. You just get a couple folks streaming some videos or doing Skype video chats back with family and friends, and that can slow down the tower for everyone in the area.
Yeah, so there's actually a surprising number of times where you might do head-to-head speed tests, and Verizon ends up being the slowest during prime times when the towers get overloaded.
But for best coverage across the country, and if you're in areas where you don't have overloaded towers, Verizon is a solid choice for RVers who are mobile.
Now, the cost of Verizon is the cost. They are the most expensive network in general, and are one of the strictest, but there's actually a few great ways to get a lot of data on Verizon.
But the easiest way to get a Verizon data plan is just to go online to VerizonWireless.com or go to one of their stores or reseller stores, and you can buy a bucket of data. So you choose, they right now have it as small, medium, large, extra large, and extra, extra large.
Yes.
Extra, extra large being 8 gigabytes of data. Not much data for us to rely on it.
Yep.
And then you add on lines that you want, so a phone line or a jetpack line or a tablet to those, and they all share that pool of data that you purchased. And one of the cool things about Verizon is that you can change that bucket level on a monthly basis. So if you're going to be somewhere where you need the data more, you can just go up to a larger level, and if you're somewhere where you don't need it, you can decrease it.
Now that does require a bit of manual management, and the downside of Verizon is if you go over your monthly allotment, then you start getting hit with overage charges. And if you have something surprises you by using a lot of data, like an OS update, or you accidentally watch a movie over cellular instead of Wi-Fi, well, suddenly you're looking at a substantial overage bill.
Yes. Another option with Verizon is a prepaid plan. So if you want something more flexible or you don't want to go through a credit check, then you can get their prepaid option, and they offer a plan that I believe it's currently 10 gigabytes for $100 that covers you for 2 months, so that you can use that data allotment over a 2-month span of time. It's a little more flexible, better for occasional travelers or those that just want to supplement public Wi-Fi hotspots.
And then there's a kind of an advanced trick with Verizon. There's still old grandfathered Verizon Unlimited plans around with real unlimited unthrottled data
that you can tether to share with laptops, tablets, and other devices. It's great for those that want to stream, those that work online. Basically, if you need more than about 20 gigabytes a month, it's worthwhile investigating how to obtain one of these. There's a process called assumption of liability. And there's also rental plans that you can get from people. And they're all going to be found like on eBay or finding someone willing to dispose of an older plan.
Yeah, you can't walk into a Verizon store and get this. It requires a lot of hoops. Kind of feels a little shady, but it's the holy grail for RVers who need a lot of data, is a real, true Verizon Unlimited plan.
Now, on RV Mobile Internet, we do have a full guide to this. It is a member-only document, so if you're interested, check it out and consider joining. You can also find the information all over the Internet. A lot of people post about it. Other options is there are what are called MVNOs. These are mobile virtual network operators. They're basically reselling a carrier's network, and Verizon has a couple of them. The main one that you might hear about is Straight Talk or Track Phone, and basically you can get a service plan with them. It'll be cheaper, may or may not have tetherable data associated with it.
Might have speed caps or other restrictions, so do your homework, because they might be using Verizon's network behind the scenes, but it's kind of often comes at a little bit of a diminished capacity.
So if you just need a little bit of data or a little bit of access, they might be a right choice, but if you're relying on it for work, homeschooling, or even video streaming, then probably best to go direct with Verizon or getting an unlimited plan. But if you're going to go with one carrier and one carrier only, Verizon is a solid choice that we recommend. And it is the core of our network.
Hey, the next major carrier to talk about is AT&T.
The Blue Network.
Blue Network, the Death Star, some people like to refer to them because of their logo. They are the second largest carrier in the U.S., and Verizon and AT&T are both large, much, much larger than the other networks combined. So these are the two most significant ones for people who travel a lot.
Now, AT&T also has a very widespread network, and you'll often see their coverage map compared to Verizon's, but they only compare LTE to LTE. Right. And something that you need to know about AT&T is that before they started rolling out LTE, they had rolled out another network called HSPA+, which now they just call 4G. Right. And it is fast.
Right, so Verizon got a really big head start with LTE. AT&T hasn't finished converting their entire network over to LTE yet, and they still have this 4G network everywhere, and it's often really worth your while to try both AT&T's 4G and LTE, and don't be dissuaded when you just see, oh, only 4G here.
Right. So if you look at the combined coverage map of their LTE network and their 4G network, and you compare that to Verizon's, they actually are pretty comparable, and actually we find them very complementary. In some of Verizon's weak spots, AT&T is the winner. So there are spots where it makes sense to have AT&T on board, especially if you're relying on mobile internet.
Right. So actually, for us, we carry AT&T phones. You let Verizon do our data, but then we can handle the switching back and forth to get the best of both worlds, because there's so many places that it's only one or the other.
Or you get into a case where one carrier is congested and the other carrier is working really well.
It's like having a reserve parachute.
Now, the downside of AT&T is also that they are priced along with Verizon. Their plans are very competitive with Verizon's. They're slightly off on what data buckets they offer and what their line access fees are, but they're very comparable in their pricing, which is expensive.
Right. And these data bucket plans like AT&T and Verizon, again, with AT&T you have overage charges to worry about. So a major operating system update or some other big usage that you accidentally do starts putting you into this very penalty box of high prices.
Now, one feature that AT&T has that Verizon doesn't is rollover data. So if you don't use all of your data bucket this month, it goes on to a credit for next month. You don't actually start tapping into it until you use up your data bucket next month. So then you can start having that extra data, and it does expire that next month. So it's only a 1 month rollover, But it is a nice little bonus sometimes. So if you have that data, it rolls over and then you can utilize it. It's not a use it or lose it sort of thing, at least not as immediately as Verizon is.
That's a very handy feature.
They also have some good international programs, especially down in Mexico. You can use your plan. You can get free voice and text and 1 gigabyte of data for free when you go into Mexico with an AT&T plan. For getting a plan,
well, directly with AT&T is the most basic way. You get their mobile share plans, or what they're called. But there's a few other options.
They also have their prepaid option, which is, they call it Go Phone. You can also get that at some resellers like Walmart. And they have both phone plans and mobile hotspot plans. So if you just want a backup option, that might be a good way to go. And they also have plans available on Straight Talk. They don't have as many MVNO options as some of the other carriers, however. There are some grandfathered in unlimited plans on AT&T that you'll hear about, especially a smartphone plan like for the iPhone. That one does not include tetherable data. It's only going to be on device. And they do reserve the right to slow down your speeds if you're on a congested tower and you've used more than about 20 to 25 gigabytes of data in a month.
So Verizon does not slow you down. AT&T can slow you down on these unlimited plans.
And also Verizon, you can tether.
Yes, exactly.
There is also one of the other cool features about AT&T is there was a time when there was an iPad unlimited plan. It is iPad only. It is unthrottled. You can't tether it or anything like that, but it's great for streaming video. They're very expensive to take over, but that might be worthwhile if you're looking for a video streaming service on one of the more robust networks. Overall, we consider AT&T a worthwhile contender as a primary network for RVers. Their network has expanded, and they do have the speeds that can keep up pretty well, at least for most connectivity needs.
Yes.
But they definitely are worthwhile having as a secondary carrier if you want 2 carriers on board, which we recommend for those who need mobile internet.
Yep. Okay, the next network of excitement is T-Mobile, also known as the Uncarriers, how they've been branding themselves.
Now, T-Mobile, they were kind of a 3rd place or 4th place contender a couple years ago, and they've moved up into a solid 3rd place, I think, now.
Yes, they've passed up Sprint in both number of subscribers, coverage area, and definitely as far as excitement, but they're still trailing a far distant 3rd to AT&T and Verizon when it comes to coverage area and nationwide.
But what they have done is through their uncarrier moves, they've really shooken up the industry. The first big change they did is they took away contracts, which none of the carriers anymore require a contract, which is fabulous. It gives you a lot more flexibility to move between carriers. They also have implemented a lot of other features.
Yeah, so the other thing T-Mobile's been fighting against is overage charges. So none of their plans have any overage charges. You have an amount of high-speed data, but when you run out of high-speed data for the month, you just drop down to 2G speeds, but at least you're not cut off and you don't have any surprise bills.
So all their plans are unlimited, just slower speeds after you exceed your data cap. That's a really cool feature for some folks. They do also offer an unlimited data plan. It is on device only and includes some tetherable data. But what they've really done with some of these plans is they've implemented features that if you're streaming music, and now just released is video streaming at low res on some partnered networks, they don't count against your high-speed data cap.
So their music freedom service means you can listen to Pandora or iTunes Radio or almost any music service out there all you want, 24/7 even, and it does not count against any of your data usage. And the video stuff is now the same thing. It's not every service yet, but they're working to add them. But it's the big ones like Netflix and HBO and
that basketball thing network.
ESPN and Major League Baseball and tons and tons of other video services, and they'll be adding more and more. You can watch them all, and with binge on turned on, you have to turn it on and off. If it's turned on, it limits your resolution. It automatically downscales the video to DVD quality 480p, which on a smaller device is plenty. But then it doesn't count against your high-speed data, so you can watch your TV shows 24/7. Sling TV is included.
And another cool feature is they introduced Mobile Without Borders earlier in 2015, which allows you to use your domestic plan when you go into Canada and Mexico just as if it's native coverage. It's actually better coverage there because they roam onto the other carriers, so you get the benefits of all of the local carriers without having to go and seek out alternative SIMs. So if you've got a high gigabyte plan, you get to use high gigabyte data up in Canada.
Even unlimited T-Mobile unlimited data travels with you. The only thing that doesn't travel when you travel with T-Mobile is the binge on video streaming. The audio streaming does. The binge on is in the U.S. only.
So for RVers, that's really cool, especially for those that go into Canada and Mexico. If you travel around the world in over 120 countries, you get unlimited low-speed data on your device as well, which is pretty cool.
Perfect for email and everything else, yes. The downside of T-Mobile is, well, it's actually kind of embarrassing. You have better coverage on T-Mobile in Canada and Mexico than you do in the U.S. T-Mobile's network is distant third to AT&T and Verizon.
It's going to work great when you're in larger cities, metropolitan areas. Most of their towers are shorter range, so they just don't have the ability like Verizon and AT&T have of putting a tower out in a rural area where they may not have a lot of people to serve, but they can send that signal further to cover more people.
Right.
T-Mobile's technology doesn't quite do that yet. They're working on it. It's not there yet.
T-Mobile has done a lot of network expansion. They've really come a long way, but they are still in distant third in the places that RVers tend to go. The more remote campground areas, out in the woods, out in the boonies, in the edges of small towns. That's where T-Mobile signal will fall down on you.
Now, to get a T-Mobile plan, they have a simple choice plan. You go pick your high-speed data cap and then the device that goes in it. There's no sharing of the data like you have on AT&T and Verizon. It's a per-device assignment. Like you said, you get the unlimited streaming services with them as well in most plans over 3 gigabytes.
Right.
They do have the unlimited option, which gives you 14 gigabytes of tetherable data to share with laptops, tablets, gaming machines, and other things like that. And they do have a tablet plan or a mobile hotspot plan. The one I like the best is their $35 per month for 6 gigabytes of data. And that gives you all those extra benefits, the mobile without borders, the streaming services, and it's a really inexpensive way to add T-Mobile to your arsenal.
And then you can just turn any old spare tablet into a hotspot if you will need to get your other devices online temporarily too. So it's a very affordable way to add access to T-Mobile's network.
So we now consider T-Mobile worthwhile adding as a third choice. We don't think for most it's useful as a primary carrier, especially if you're traveling outside of metro areas. Mm-hmm. But as it's good to have on board, I think. I think that there's enough features now, especially if you're considering international travel.
Yeah.
And the fourth carrier, Sprint.
Sprint. Oh, they used to be third. They've been lapped by T-Mobile. They've been really struggling as a company the last several years. But the interesting thing with Sprint is they actually own more spectrum, raw spectrum, than even Verizon does. They just have not had the resources to develop it and build out their network. So they're often very, very disappointing when it comes to speeds and coverage.
Right. So a lot of spectrum doesn't do us a lot of good in practical use. Right. Because they are fourth and they are trying to keep up, they do offer some of the best deals. Mm-hmm. A lot of promotional plans come up for them. You can snag some great deals with them. Of course, you get what you pay for with Sprint.
Right. You get Sprint's network, which is, for RVers, unless you're in a strong Sprint area, you'll find to be more disappointing than you're really, really prepared to have.
So for those of us that are traveling, moving around locations, don't rely on Sprint as your primary carrier. As a backup carrier, maybe especially if you're going to some urban areas and metro areas or traveling along interstates, it's probably going to be useful for that. Yes. You can get a direct plan with Sprint. My eyes go cross whenever I try to figure out their plans, but
they're changing all the time.
They're changing all the time. But some of their interesting ones are actually on their MVNOs, those resellers. They have a lot of options out there because they do resell their services a lot. That's how they get a lot of their subscribers. Some of the most interesting ones, I think, are on Karma.
So Karma is a hotspot only. They don't do phones. They don't do tablets. It's a hotspot that you can either do 2 different ways of adding data to it. And the network behind it is Sprint, but Karma will provide all the interface to it.
So they have 2. One is called Refuel, and that one you just buy data up front. It never expires, so it's a great way to have some data ready to go for Sprint at any time. You don't have to worry about it's going to go away at the end of the month. Mm-hmm. It's just there until you use it.
And because it never expires, there's also no monthly fee, so it's just completely tucked away, no ongoing costs until you actually use that data. Then the other part of Karma is called Never Stop. Now this one is a monthly fee. It's $50 a month, but it is unlimited data.
Capped at 5 megabit per second. Now that may sound caps scary. We rarely find Sprint goes above 5 megabit per second, so it's really
Yes.
not that much of an maybe in some cities you'll get some faster speeds, but in most areas 5 megabit per second is
Plenty. It's plenty enough to stream with. So Karma is a really great way to get access to Sprint's network without any ongoing commitments or costs.
No contract either, so you can turn it off if you're in a non-Sprint area. Non-Sprint area for a while.
The other really interesting MVNO is actually Google, that has cut a deal, has a plan called Google Fi, that if you use special phones, gives you access to both Sprint and T-Mobile behind the scenes, and the Google Fi phone picks the best network wherever you happen to be.
Now, the downside of Google Fi is, or Project Fi, is that you have to have an invitation from Google to even buy one of their devices. They're still rolling it out. Hopefully that gets more streamlined in the future. But you pay a flat rate, $20 a month for voice and text, and then you just pay $10 per gigabyte that you want. And if you buy more than you actually use, they refund it to you. Now, that's pretty cool.
Yep.
And it works internationally as well. Same rates.
Yep. Absolutely. So Project Fi is a great way to get a little bit of access to both Sprint and T-Mobile.
Now, for our own personal cellular setup, we rely on mobile internet. We keep a Verizon unlimited plan that we bought. We actually assumed liability over a year ago, and we pay about $75 a month for that.
And that is the holy grail for mobile internet data for RVers. It's awesome.
We keep a high bandwidth, a high data cap AT&T shared plan for our iPhones. We bought a higher package to save money on it. We got it on a double data deal last year. We're always keeping track of the deals and snagging them when we can. And then, so we use that as our backup. And then we do now keep a T-Mobile tablet plan.
It's kind of our entertainment device for binging video and music, and just as a great backup connection. And also, it's been super useful traveling internationally.
And we do keep Sprint on board just for testing, but honestly, I wouldn't rely on them.
Yes. Hopefully Sprint will get better. They've got a few cities where their network is awesome, but they've got a long way to go.
So that is a wrap-up of the 4 major carriers and how they stack up for RVers. This video will be embedded in a document about the 4 carriers. We keep it updated all the time. There's going to be a link right down there showing you where you can find the document. It's free to go browse. We recommend that you check in on that before making any decisions to see if there's any been changes since we made this video.
There's always new promotions. There's always new deals. There's always, everything is changing constantly in this industry. We really try to keep up on it at rvmobileinternet.com. So join us there.
And we'll see you on the next one. Bye.